Rwanda Development Board registered investments worth 3.7 billion US dollars in 2021, up from 1.3 billion US dollars in 2020. This is the highest investment registration to date and was driven by strategic investment projects, according to Rwanda Development Board. The new investments are expected to create 48,669 new jobs, representing a 97% increase from the previous year. The government aims to create 214,000 new jobs from investments and other employment sources every year. Economic sectors that attracted the most significant registered investments in 2021 include construction, real estate, and manufacturing, which accounted for 72% of all investments registered. Construction accounted for 31%, real estate accounted for 26%, while manufacturing, including agro-processing, accounted for 15%. Now, other sectors that attracted significant investments are financial and insurance services, agriculture, accommodation and food services, energy, health, and ICT. Some of the investments registered in 2021 include 237.9 million US dollars by Ultimate Developers Limited for the development of Vision City Phase 2, a 145.9 million US dollars investment by Rwanda Ultimate Golf Course Limited into the Kigali Golf Resort and Villa projects, a 20.7 million US dollars powdered milk project, and a 22.5 million US dollar project by Global Electric Vehicle Limited to manufacture electric vehicles. Tourism revenues increased by 25% from 131 million US dollars in 2020 to 164 million US dollars in 2021. Now, the mine sectors generated 12.5 million US dollars in 2021 compared to 5.1 million US dollars in 2020. Total visitors arrivals increased by 2.8% from 490,000 in 2020 to 512,000 in 2021. Sports events hosted during this period significantly contributed to visitors' arrival and revenues. In exports, receipts from the exports of goods and services increased by 9.4% now, rather in 2021, from 1.9 billion US dollars in 2020 to 2.1 billion in 2021. Now, commenting on the 2021 performance, the Deputy CEO of the Rwanda Development Board, Chief Executive Officer Zephany Niyonkuru, says the record investments have been made possible by the government's economic recovery efforts post-COVID-19, including the 100 billion Rwandan francs Economic Recovery Fund.
These investments were registered and we had a record year because of the programs that the government of Rwanda has put in place in terms of fast-tracking the economic recovery in the aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic. So there are quite a number of programs that were put in place, but one of them, major one, was the Manufacture and Build to Recover program, a program which was established to provide incentives to members of the private sector who had some projects to implement related to construction, related to manufacturing, including agro-processing. So this particular program alone contributed around 1.2 billion in the 3.7 billion USD that we registered last year. So that's one. And then number two, as you may recall, the government of Rwanda also last year approved a new investment code, which provide also for certain incentives and quite a number of sectors. And so as we start implementing this new investment code, we have also seen quite a number of new investments coming on board as well. And then number three, talking of the specific sectors of focus, we also started last year. We attracted through the Rwanda Finance Limited a lot of investments related to finance were attracted. The country is positioning Kigali as an international financial center, so we also saw investments related to finance coming in. So those are the major drivers of the investments that we registered in 2021.
When we talk about the investments registered, are these investments that are actually operational right now or are in the pipeline?
It's a combination. There are some that have already started because we register projects which are at 2 levels. Some can be greenfields, complete new investments coming on board. Others can be expansion of existing investments. Someone may have a manufacturing plant and say, I only had, let's say, 3 production lines, and I want to add line number 4 and number 5.
Yeah.
So those ones, it's really a continuation of whatever that was existing.
Okay.
But on overall, when you talk about a conversion, some investment, depending with the sector, will take between 6 months to a year. Others, 2 to 3 years. But if you talk of manufacturing, most of the times these ones they start almost immediately, because they simply construct a shell and then they order the processing plant, which they bring on board and start the actual manufacturing immediately. So it really comes back to the sectors. But again, programs like Manufacturing Build to Recover, are time bound. They're supposed to end next year. And the investors who benefited from this program, they are really doing their best to make sure that they complete the implementation. They really make the investment and start the production of the output of the investments.
Let's talk about the new ones, the new investments that come in place. Looking at probably the last 2 years, what is the rate at which they actually get to maturity and start being operational?
You'd say that if you take what was registered over the last 3 years, the implementation rate has been above 62%. But of course, the pandemic, had a certain, slowdowns.
Yeah.
But again, with these incentives that we are giving to members of the private sector, we expect to see more conversion. So 2022, we want to put a lot of efforts in making sure that what was registered be converted. Yeah. There are some that have started. There are some that have already started, manufacturing of goods, which are not only supplying the local market, but also exporting. But again, we want to make sure that we fast track the implementation and ensure that all of these values that were registered over the next 3-4 years, we have full implementation.
So there is a possibility that the new year, projected 48,000 new jobs could actually come to realization.
Exactly, and they may even go, beyond that, because these investments that we register, we have 2 categories. There are those who come and say, we need a certificate of incorporation, which is more of, which helps them to get even tax identification number. They get a number for them to be able to contribute for their staff under the pension fund. And in these categories, we register 10,000 of those every year. Yeah. But you have a second category where they come and say, we want to benefit from the incentives under the investment code. So they bring their business plans and say, I would take 3 years to implement my projects, and year 1 I invest this, year 2 I invest this, year 3 I invest this. So we have a full-fledged aftercare department which works with these investors to make sure that the projects or the commitment they made be converted and they start operations.
By outlining, perhaps, you could tell us where is the government's priority in terms of new investments? Is it in manufacturing or anything you could tell us? Probably better.
As the economy recovers, definitely with the Manufacturing Build to Recover, we had a lot of emphasis on manufacturing, including, of course, group processing, and also, construction, ensuring that we fast track the projects that we have under our construction. And with the new investment code also, there are some new areas that were added in, which are really giving special attention, including, innovation, including ensuring that we bring alternative sources of financing, especially through the Rwanda Finance Limited, as they implement the project of making sure that Kigali becomes an international financial center. So we also have innovation parks, ensuring that you really have an ecosystem where you have entrepreneurs, providing IT solution or innovative solution to catalyze the rest of the economy, be agriculture technologies, education technologies, financial technologies, among others. So that's even why the government entered even into partnership with Africa 50. Now we have Kigali Innovation City, which is going to be a Pan-African innovation hub, and it's now, it has started operations. We have some, anchor tenant there, and implementation continues. So those are some of the key areas. But the idea is to make sure that as we boost the economic recovery and go back to growth levels, we also make sure that we recapture domestic market. There are several products that we've been importing where we can actually manufacture them locally. So there's that part of domestic market recapturing. And then there is also increasing on the export that we do in the region and beyond.
Fantastic. Very lastly, I understand sports events attracted a lot of revenues for the nation. Could you actually tell us if there is anything that the government is doing to make sure that we continue to reap big from sports events?
Yes, MICE, so meeting, incentives, conferences and exhibitions, including actually sports, is one of the products that we, government of Rwanda has been strengthening to make sure that we diversify our, tourism offering beyond those who go for, Kagera game drive to see gorillas or to see some specific sites. So we're also putting a lot of emphasis on events, including sports. And the government of Rwanda has heavily invested in this, ensuring that we really have infrastructure that will be helping us to achieve this. You saw the new cricket stadium, the new golf, the Kigali Arena, the stadium of Mahoro is also being, expanded. So the idea is to make sure that same as we attract big conferences, we also attract a sports event. Last year, we attracted, we hosted BL. It was, a big event. And then this year, we're going to have also BL again. Last year, we had Afro basketball. So we are really not only attracting these events that can take place here, but also even teams that want to come here and they do their trainings before going into to major competition. So sports is one of the priorities, especially if you look into the segment of events. And the government has really been making sure that the right investments into the infrastructure are done so that we can attract more events.
Zephany Nyonguru, the Deputy CEO of Rwanda Development Board, many thanks for your time.
Thank you too.